For this episode, I'll be talking about oxytocin, right? So I got a couple of references down and we're just kind of looking through it. So the first reference is Wikipedia. Like this actually gave me a very detailed explanation of oxytocin. It even taught me new things about it. And yeah, let's get into it. So, what is oxytocin? Oxytocin is a peptide hormone, a neuropeptide normally produced in the hypothalamus and released by the posterior pituitary gland. So, in its natural form, it plays a role in maternal bonding and milk production. Then, production and secretion of oxytocin is controlled by a positive feedback mechanism. So, oxytocin causes more release of oxytocin, which causes more release of oxytocin. So, it has also been referred to as the cuddle hormone or the love hormone, just like when you're like with people, like hugging, cuddling, like being with people or persons or even animals that you love, the hormone is secreted. So, there are also the uterine contracting properties of oxytocin. So we could see in the labor ward, it's used to like stimulate uterine contractions. Um, yeah, so um sim- estrogen stimulates the secretion of oxytocin and it also increases the expression of its receptor. So estrogen and oxytocin have a co thing going on. Also, another thing I noted was oxytocin and vasopressin are the only known hormones released by the human posterior pituitary gland to act as a distance. So in relationship bonding context, vasopressin and oxytocin have also been seen to like have a co-regulating action. So it's interesting to see that they are both from the same side, right? Then there are the neural sources, which is like from the brain, but there are also the non-neural sources. And then the interesting parts I saw that it's gotten from. So we have the corpus luteum, the placenta, in the interstitial cells of lady in the testicles, in both sexes, in the retina. Like, what do you think about visual appeal and love and bonding? Because the retina is the eye, in the adrenal medulla, the thymus, and the pancreas. So you can see it's not just in one place, it's like all over. So no, 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 no. We all like I the reason why I put this is to emphasize the things that are not like commonly known about oxytocin. So we know it's there in milk ejection reflex, is there in uterine contraction, is in human physical intimacy response. But let's look at things that are more like unknown. So here we see oxytocin and autism. So oxytocin has been implicated in the etiology of autism, with a report suggesting that autism is correlated to a mutation on the oxytocin receptor gene. This is quite interesting because oxytocin is also seen in like high social skills, like recognizing social behavior. And then we see that in autistic individuals, social behavior and understanding is a bit it's not so clear, crystal clear. So we can see oxytocin has a role to play in this. Then we can also see protection of brain functions. Um, they demonstrated that the nasal application of oxytocin can alleviate impaired learning capabilities caused by restrained stress. So we know when you are in stress, when you're in fight or flight, you really can't stay calm enough to learn something. So in these studies, they showed that introducing oxytocin allowed the animals to like calm down enough to actually learn, which is very interesting because you could see in people who grew up in very stressful or who are going through stress, they begin to like fail in their studies. That's because they are not sick. One of the etiology could be, upon further research, could be that they're not secreting enough oxytocin to let their body relax enough to assimilate new information. Then another peculiar part I saw was human in-group bonding. So oxytocin causes positive attitudes. Like if people are in a group and they've bonded, oxytocin allows this group of people to show more positive actions towards themselves and aggressive negative actions towards people who they believe are not part of their group. And also, even lying and showing dishonesty is seen as good mentally. Oxytocin makes you feel so if it means in benefits to the group. I think this is very interesting to know. There's also addiction vulnerability. So, um, concentrations of endogenous oxytocin can impact the effects of various drugs and one's susceptibility to substance use disorders, with higher concentrations associated with lower susceptibility. So, in persons who have had higher doses of oxytocin, they have been shown to show lower chances of getting addicted to substances. So, that is something interesting to know. Just so you know, you can self-stimulate oxytocin. I would talk more about it as we go on, but just for now, like self hugs or wearing fabrics that cause low grade stimulation on your skin, you can induce oxytocin in that way. Um, let's see. Yes, oxytocin produces antidepressants like effects in animal models of depression. So very interesting to see. Trust and oxytocin, romantic attachment and oxytocin, group 7 dishonesty and deception, and oxytocin, social behavior and wound healing. So we can see oxytocin is also thought to modulate inflammation by decreasing certain cytokines. Cytokines are part of your inflammatory response system. So yeah, I think this can be looked at in chronic inflammatory diseases. So probably like actions to stimulate oxytocin, and in cases where are necessary, like drugs to like endogenous, is it endogenous? Maybe nasally, like nasal oxytocin or whichever way. I think they use this thing too. But I think it can be considered in management of chronic inflammatory disorders. So let's go to the next one that I looked at. This is from Science Direct, right? Oxytocin specifically enhances valence dependent parasympathetic responses. So, your nervous system is divided into your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system has to do with your fight or flight or fawn or freeze response, while your parasympathetic nervous system is like more chill and laid back. So the results from this research indicated that oxytocin specifically modulates physical activity of the parasympathetic nervous system, which potentially reflects an increased motivational value of facial expressions following oxytocin treatments. So, so you can see that. I don't know. I think this research is mostly about social interactions and oxytocin, right? Um, let's go to another one I looked at. Yes. Most of them kind of say the same thing, but they're just like individual, like just tiny things to note to just have a fuller picture, right? See here. The effects of oxytocin that is released by sensory stimulation during different kinds of interactive behaviors are often underestimated or even forgotten. Like we mostly think, oh, I should maybe get a hug, I need a hug, or I need to be with someone, or you just like, there are ways you can personally stimulate oxytocin in yourself, right? So, so oxytocin is released in response to activation of the sensory nerves during labor, breastfeeding, and physical activity. In addition, oxytocin is released in response to low intensity stimulation of the skin, in response to touch, stroking, warm temperature. And it's not only released like from parents, child, or relationship, it's also released between two adults like having a positive interaction. You could just, that's why like kind of talking to your friend just makes you feel so good. Or like if you have a pet, like petting your animal or being around them. And also food intake, because there was some, yeah, it was here. Food intake or physical activity may be used or even abused to achieve oxytocin linked well being and stress relief to compensate for lack of good relationships or when the levels of anxiety are high, right? So it means that, like, because of those feel good hormones to stimulate it, it can be, some people see it as a way to like using food and physical activity to like stimulate that hormone, which like is not being judgmental. It's just trying to show that a lot of these things that we kind of judge ourselves for or just tie so much to identity is actually very physiological. Like it is just science, it's just what things are. So understanding how things work allows you, you may not be able to control it, but at least you're aware of what is going on. You're not just like just lost in a storm of emotions and hormones and wondering what the hell is going on. You can also learn how to use these hormones for your own self. Like, what do you need in the moment? How do I get it? You understand? So you could feel if you're feeling lonely or feeling afraid, again, I can say like self-help, wearing warm clothing, like maybe petting an animal, calling a friend that is like that you have a good relationship with, and just having a positive interaction. It would get like oxytocin flowing and it would allow you to stimulate the feeling that you want. So let's go to here. So this one was quite interesting to me. It was about yes. I think somewhere at the end she called it limbic hijacking because it's actually your limbic brain that is in charge of these processes, which I think is really, really good. So she spoke about the neuroscience and psychology behind dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin, and noradrenaline and adrenaline, and how they create an illusion of instant love or emotional fusion that manipulators can exploit. So in this case, I don't want you to think that oh, a manipulator is out here reading science, trying to understand how to manipulate me. This, like, your brain is actually the like one of the best computers to ever exist. And your limbic brain is your primal brain, right? Our neocortex, our cortex are the more recent brains. So your limbic brain must have picked up patterns over time that are very subconscious. So someone could be playing, like someone could be manipulating you and they are not even aware that they are manipulating you, right? But there's a part of their brain that knows that this is a way to get what I want. And it will just kind of feel blurry to them if they are crossing your boundaries or not. So even you, so you just have to be kind of aware about these things. So you don't, yeah. The first one is dopamine. That's your, you all know dopamine when you do something. So dopamine doesn't create pleasure directly. It creates anticipation and seeking. So you start to crave something, right? So you start craving not the person, but the feeling that they give you, right? So you get stuck in a kind of dopamine loop. You anticipate being with that person, you get the reward that's being with that person. Then there's the withdrawal that the person is like no longer present. Then you start craving that person again, and then it starts all over again. So you're like digging deep in that loop. Then we have oxytocin and vasopressin. Like we said, oxytocin is increased during physical interaction, hugging, eye contact, skin to skin, emotional intimacy, and empathetic exchanges. So vasopressin is linked more to territorial behavior and loyalty, right? So you could see, and in these cases, your body begins to see this person as someone you can trust. Even if everyone is like, why are you with this person? Like, this is very terrible. You shouldn't be here. Or you feel like it is a good thing. This could also relate to family, workplaces, friendships. So when I say relationship, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about all the you as a human being and another human being, all the forms of relationships that could occur. So here your body's tricked into treating the manipulator as an attachment person because of oxytocin. And then you have vasopressin also secreted, so you are protective of and you are loyal to the person, right? We can see this also happening in like cults. It just came to my mind. So we have noradrenaline and adrenaline, right? So we know where adrenaline comes from, like hyperactions and all that. So when in this kind of situation, when adrenaline spikes, right, that is a very emotional response. And emotions kind of tie in memory. So if you try to tie a memory with an emotion, you would have an easier time recalling it. So your body kind of ties in that person's memory with emotions, and then they just kind of like you get stuck in a gridlock. So you have dopamine that is making you like create the person, you have oxytocin that is like providing safety and trust, and then you have adrenaline sealing the entire memory with emotion. So you can see how all these things can happen. But yeah, reversing the hijack, you have to break the word loop. So I would say in persons who are thinking like, let's say like a workplace that is very toxic to you, you can break the reward loop by, quitting the job. Just stop. Because the reward loop in that case would be like your 9 to 5 or something, your paycheck. So you have to break the reward loop. Then rebuild oxytocin safely in a work or career type of context. It would be learning how to have healthy boundaries and healthy work ethic in your craft. So you don't have to be in a toxic, hyper fast paced place or in a place that is like really bad for you to achieve your heart's desires. You can slowly learn how to, you know, serve your purpose in ways that are more pleasing. Then regulate adrenaline. So you don't really want like your body to be flooded with adrenaline all the time. That's very stressful. So learning how to like just practice grounding, breath work, physical activity, and all that. Then engaging the prefrontal cortex. Remember this brain, this whole hormonal cocktail is in your limbic brain. So we want to bring back our functional brain online, then relearn safe attachments. So I think that's about it. The other researches I was looking at, so this one was about mesenchymal stem cells found in no, no, no. But there's the mesenchymal stem cells that are found in monthly period flu. So that's interesting. I'm still researching that. But here I found out from this that the ovaries, that's where the eggs are contained, are actually in like it's a whole ecosystem. And then there are pockets of eggs. There are pockets of species that connect that contain eggs. And then these species are innervated by sympathetic nervous system. So remember we said there's parasympathetic and there's sympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is more chill and your sympathetic nervous system is your stress response. So if this ecosystem is innervated by the sympathetic nervous system, in my opinion, the insight I got from this was that in order to have like chill, healthy eggs, you actually have to be calm. Like we know we can switch to parasympathetic nervous system and be calm, but you actually need the baseline of your sympathetic nervous system to also be calm. I hope you can translate that. Yeah. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth insight on oxytocin. You can leave a comment about things you found